This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, great. All right. Good evening. We are going to call to order this regular session meeting of the Easthampton School Committee. We're going to roll call in. Ben
Hersey here.
Megan
Harvey here.
Laura Scott present. Sam
Hunter here.
Linda
Markey here.
Thank you. We are going to begin with correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
I don't have any to report.
Okay, great. Any gifts to report?
I don't have any.
Okay. And we're going to move on to our student representative update here from EHS is Asta Patel. Hi, Asta. Do you want to take the podium?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Asta Patel. I'm a student council president. I'm just sharing some of the work we've been doing since our last school committee report. One of our biggest focuses has been meaningful inclusion, especially in partnership with the special education department. We've worked on easing the transition of students into high school by having a unified bocce team this year, and students from the life skills program visited the school, and they were welcomed by student council members who they had become friends with from bocce and joined them for lunch. We are continuing to explore opportunities to connect with these students by working closely with Dr. Lively and their teachers to create events that promote inclusion across our school. We've also been working on Step Up Day and our visit to Mountain View, where we helped the transition for the 8th grade class. We've talked with some incoming students about what to expect in high school, including available sports, clubs, and classes. Outside of school, we have continued our monthly visits to Lathrop to build intergenerational relationships. We've been playing games like chair volleyball and bingo, while also having conversations to learn more about each other's interests while learning about each other's generations. We're also looking at planning a community cleanup to contribute to Easthampton's community. In terms of school spirit and engagement, we're working on revamping some of our older events, moving away from traditional pep rallies to new events that get students excited to be at the school and enthusiastic to participate. Our goal is to create a culture where everyone feels welcomed and involved. And earlier this month, a group of us attended the spring conference in Hyannis, where we gathered many ideas from schools that we're hoping to adapt here to support our school climate and culture. Lastly, student council elections for Easthampton High School are scheduled for April 30th, when we will vote for a new executive board. Also, Walter Baker, our current historian, is running for regional vice president, so we're rooting for him. If elected, he would represent schools across Western Massachusetts and work to support student leadership across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Asta.
Thank you.
Asta, at the conference, do they still do a lip sync competition?
Yes.
Did you participate?
No, but I think next year a lot of the student council members are going to do that.
Nice. We want video? Video, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Asta. We'll see you April 8th. Would that be your last report to us? All right. All right. I'll bear that in mind. Thank you. We recently named a representative from Mountain View School, Kenzie SQ, but we've had some rescheduling. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago that had to be rescheduled due to some technical difficulties. So I expect we'll remind and invite Kenzie to join us to offer her update at our next meeting on April 8th. And we really look forward to that. At this point, we're going to open the floor for public comment. If there's anyone joining us in person or remotely who'd like to share their thoughts, we just ask that you identify yourself and keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. So we'll open that up for a minute or so now and see if anyone is interested. Easthampton Media so dutifully showed that those are empty seats sitting in. So seeing no parties asking to participate in public speak, we're going to close public comment for this portion of the evening. I do want to highlight to the public that at the close of this regular session agenda items, we are going to close this meeting and reopen as the public hearing for our proposed budget for the upcoming school year. So that public hearing will have an additional public speak, and given unique nature of our timing tonight, we could certainly entertain some short comments from the public on things other than the public hearing if necessary. So we're going to move on to the superintendent update. Superintendent Beninda?
So our update is actually going to come at the end of this when we're going to be doing our budget update. And we're hoping that everybody watches it and that you see that it is really a level service budget, and the only increase that we're really asking for would be the life skills teacher going to the high school because the program is moving there. So,
Maureen, can I ask for you to just, because I don't want to take from the budget hearing to get into depth, could you just explain for the public, because Asta touched on that program a little bit, and I think probably there's a good amount of the public that aren't aware of what that program is.
Sure. So we've had a life skills program at Mountain View. It starts in the elementary school and goes up to the middle school. We have 6 students there that are going to move now to the high school. Many years ago, over 10 years ago, there actually was a program there. And so we're bringing the program back. We call it Life Skills Students. The students is a self-contained classroom, but the students are integrated for different activities, as they want to be involved in them. So, for example, the phys ed, art, music, some electives that they may be interested in. So we're
Club sports, extracurriculars. Sure.
Extracurricular, all the activities that a high school has, the students will be eligible to participate in and encouraged to participate in. The program also, in the later years, does training for transportation training, so the students can get themselves to the grocery store, to doctor's appointments, to work, to visit their friends, to visit their relatives. Also involves job placement in the community, so that they get job skills prior to leaving high school, and the hope is that then they would stay in that job, or it would give them the experience they can apply for other similar jobs that they've been trained in. So it's a great program, and it keeps our students in our district where they, with their friends that they grew up with, and we're excited that we're bringing that back to the high school.
Very exciting, really rewarding program. Glad to have it back. Is that it for your update, or do you have more?
That's it for me.
Okay. So we are going to move on to the business update. Hello again.
Good evening. At this time, 62.93% of the appropriation has either been spent or encumbered for FY25. It's important to note that some of our expenses that are currently in the general fund may be reclassified as we approach the end of the fiscal year and move to other sources such as school choice or circuit breaker. We'll be monitoring that, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the year. We're going to monitor any areas in the budget where we may need to make transfers, especially out of district tuition and special education transportation and McKinney-Vento transportation are areas that we anticipate that we may have some budget deficits towards the end of the year. And I will be coming to the school committee in April with more concrete numbers about our estimates about that as we get closer to the end of the year. The FY26 budget process clearly is well underway. I have not updated this report that was supposed to be presented to you guys 2 weeks ago that was saying 2 weeks from now we'll have our budget presentation, but obviously that will happen this evening. The finance subcommittee met and we had 3 meetings looking at various aspects of the proposed operating budget for FY26. It reflects the primary cost drivers that we'll get into more when we look at our budget proposal. In your packet are the personnel reports for January and February. We were able to fill some positions that had been vacant, such as a night custodian position at Mountain View. We've had some people leave the district and some others come in, but currently, as of this report, we had 2 paraeducator positions that were vacant at Mountain View. And I think on your report it said that the night custodian position was still vacant, but he started on March 1st, which is why that position wasn't listed on your report. But feel free to let me know if you have any other questions.
Great. Anybody have questions on finance or personnel? Is it fun for you, Julia, to see yourself listed in a personnel report that you then deliver to your committee?
It is slightly ironic, yes.
It's like voting for ourselves. It's just a little upside down. Thank you very much. And we will be hearing more from our fantastic new Director of Business Services, Julia Sari-Franks, as we move into our budget proposal, which she's worked tirelessly on. And I have to say, I want to commend Julia because it was a seamless transition. coming in at that time of the year is a gargantuan ask, and she delivered it with such expertise and grace, and we didn't even feel a bump in the road, and we're just so grateful for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to school committee discussion. First up is the policy subcommittee update. Sam Hunter, the chair of our policy committee, would you like to take the lead on that discussion?
Yes, we met a little while back. We have finally brought for, I believe is it the first reading tonight for the?
I believe it is.
Transition policy. I feel like we've had this on the books for a while. So we have written a policy that we'd like to do a first reading of tonight. This is regarding transition services for students with disabilities ages 18 to 22. And just a little bit of, do you want me to do like background and explain it first, and then we'll
That would be great.
do that? So essentially, one of the results of the MCAS graduation requirement ending, and we're starting to see this kind of play out in other parts of the state. Up until now, it's been pretty clear that students who are unable to pass the MCAS in 10th grade and who have disabilities that have resulted in the curriculum needing to be modified may receive transition services from the school district up to age 22. So one of the concerns with, and I heard this actually when we were running for office,
Right.
There were a couple of parents who brought this up, saying, I really don't want to have the MCAS as a graduation requirement, but I'm worried about my student with a disability not receiving those transition services up to age 22. And so just to be very clear, like the transition services are considered a part of a free and appropriate public education for students with certain disabilities and certain needs, regardless of whether or not they pass the MCAS in 10th grade. But it's become like very clear now that there are some people who are a little bit confused, and they're thinking that, if they are unable to pass the MCAS, as long as they can meet other kind of modified graduation requirements, then they should be able to leave when they're 18. But a lot of our students, particularly students with developmental disabilities, and especially since we were already talking about the life skills program, those students as well will be in need of some additional support after age 18. This tends to be non-academic. It tends to be community focused, helping students gain vocational skills and experience, learning how to take the bus, learning how to get out in the community, safety skills, both crossing the streets and parking lots, but also how to interact with strangers, how to ask for help when you don't know where you are or when you have to talk to a stranger. So it's all kind of based around what the individual student needs. And so what I wanted to do, and what the policy subcommittee agreed that we all wanted to do, was to come up with a policy so that we have something in writing that families can understand and can refer to, so that when their student is 16, 17, 18, and they're trying to decide what the next few years are going to look like, we have a pretty clear policy in place saying that we want to make sure that these transition services continue to be available when they're needed, regardless of whether or not the student has passed the MCAS. And so the policy just kind of lays out what the process is, and also includes the 688 referral, which is basically the school noting to state agencies that this is a student who, once they graduate, they may need some assistance from an adult service provider or an adult agency, and then through doing that referral, they're able to kind of get ready to receive those services, and the state agency is ready for them, hopefully, when they turn 22. So this does not apply to all students with disabilities, but it does apply to a percentage for sure. And
for those whom it does apply, it is a critical, necessary support.
It's a big deal, and it's not something that, honestly, I think a lot about kind of when we were just talking about the life skills program. Actually, this is such a good segue. A lot of what we have been talking about is just integrating those students into the general high school environment.
Right.
So they get to go to prom, they get to go play sports, they get to participate in clubs,
build relationships,
and all of those things are things that those students tend to need. It tends to take them a little bit longer to gain those skills, and they just need a little bit more of a supportive environment. And so one of the cool things, and one of the things that I'm excited to get into in the next few years is that if we can really like think creatively and like very intentionally around our transition services, these are the types of things that like we can become known for these services, and people can kind of look to us as a model. We live in a great community. We have a lot of natural resources around here. We have a great relationship with the library. We've got 2 bus lines in town.
Right.
It's a very safe place to walk around. We have Riverside Industries right next door, and we have a lot of different small businesses who are looking to work with our students.
Right.
So I think this is really cool. I am excited to get to kind of make this one of our values that we really are putting out there, and I also want families and students to feel like they're welcome here. And I think sometimes when you have a kid with a disability, particularly with a developmental disability, you see all these other families and all these other kids of the same age doing and being involved in school in all these different ways that maybe you feel like your child can't access, or you feel like is not really for your family. So I like just being able to let them know that like we're thinking about them, and that we're here for them too.
There's one more part to this, and we were asked by several community members and local organizations to speak in support of removing the MCAS as a graduation requirement. And we spoke publicly about this, and Sam really brought it to my attention, and I was in immediate agreement, and we spoke at the time that what we really need to do is shore up as much as we can on the district level a protection. Since we do agree with the MCAS being removed as a graduation requirement, we wanted this extra parachute protection for the small population of students for whom this would be really critically important. So this is making good on that promise.
And this is definitely something I've heard, and this is something that I hear a lot about in my day job as well. And I've heard from families in other districts who are already feeling like they're having trouble obtaining the transition services that they thought were coming. And there does seem to be kind of confusion around what the MCAS actually means for this population of students. So I'm glad that we've been able to be like, that we've been able to sort of see ahead of that and kind of get in front of it. And I appreciate everybody working with me on this. This was kind of a very exciting thing.
Excellent. So if you want, I can state the motion.
Okay.
And then I would ask someone just to...
Do you want me to read this out loud, or do you want to just...
That is the point of a first reading.
Of a first reading,
Yep.
yes.
Sure. And just to remind the public, so the way the process works when we consider and adopt a new policy, it's required to have 2 separate readings at 2 separate public meetings. So tonight we're scheduling the first reading of this proposed policy. The second reading would take place likely at our next meeting on April 8th. And then at that point, if it was adopted, it would be entered into our policy manual, and it would be a newly active policy for the district.
Yeah.
Often what we're doing is updating an existing policy. In this case, we are
actually
creating...
writing a policy.
Creating a new policy.
We wrote a policy.
Okay.
So this is...
So I'm going to say, motion. Motion to enter the following as a first reading proposed policy for the Easthampton Public School District. Go ahead, Sam.
Transition services for students with disabilities ages 18 to 22. Students with IEPs are entitled to free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Many students with IEPs work on goals unrelated to graduation requirements as a part of their free and appropriate public education. Students who are not able to meet graduation requirements as a result of their disability are entitled by law to special education services, which include secondary transition services that meet the requirement of a free and appropriate public education until age 22. The goal is to help a student move purposefully towards completion of their high school program and be prepared for planned post-high school opportunities. In the final year of high school, if the student has earned the competency determination, is on track to complete all local graduation requirements, and the school has provided the student's IEP services, including a secondary transition services that meet the requirements of FAPE, the district will plan to issue a regular high school diploma consistent with the projected graduation date included in the current IEP. This projected date may be the same as the student's age peers, or it may be a later date consistent with the student's IEP. In some circumstances, the IEP team, scrolling, there you go.
Yeah.
In some circumstances, the IEP team may determine that the provision of FAPE requires that the student continue to receive additional transition services and or other special education services, even though the student has earned the competency determination and completed all local graduation requirements. The team will then specify on the IEP the needed services and revise the date for the student's graduation with a high school diploma. Part of this transition process may include a Chapter 688 referral, which would refer a student to an appropriate adult services provider, such as the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, which is now called Massability, Department of Mental Health, or Department of Developmental Services, to assist in the transition to adulthood. Post-grade 12 transition programs shall be community-based and highly individualized to the transition needs of the student with a disability. The decision regarding the need for transition services, the type of transition services needed, and the duration of transition services is one that should take place during a student's IEP meeting, beginning no earlier than age 14 and no later than age 17, and shall be revisited every year at the student's IEP meeting until the student completes their schooling. Under the law, transition services must be, quote, a coordinated set of activities designated to be a result-oriented process that is focused on improving the academic and functional achievement of the child with a disability to facilitate a child's movement from school to post-school activities, end quote. Transition services are based upon the student's needs, strengths, preferences, and interests, and include instruction, related services, community experiences, the development of employment and other post-school adult living objectives, and, if appropriate, acquisition of daily living skills and provision of a functional vocational evaluation.
Okay, I am looking for someone to say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Megan. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions or discussion?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So the IEP team is doing the determination. Is there an appeal process? Like if the parents don't agree, is that just regular IEP?
It's the regular IEP process, which is a consensus. It's supposed to be a team consensus. So the whole team would determine if the child was in need of of transition services, and if there was disagreement on the team, there's a process to follow through the IEP process.
Just wanted to make sure that if parents are not happy with that, then they have to.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, how many students do we generally have each year in these transition services? Do we know?
That I
hard to.
don't have that.
I've seen it travel in bubbles. So in my experience, there were these little pockets. I remember my first term, I think we had 3 or 4 students. And sometimes it depends on what services the district is willing to provide for this. So sometimes these are sent as out of district.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, because right now, some of our transition students go out of district.
Right.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so our transition students could be in district or out of district, depending on their particular.
Or what needs we were able to meet as a district.
And sometimes, I don't know currently if Easthampton, how often Easthampton does this, but some districts actually contract with adult service providers. So they might contract with Riverside or with Viability or, NEBA or whatever. And so the student might not even be going to high school. They might be going to one of these adult service providers and receiving services there. So it's kind of hard to tell. And it's at some point, sometimes even the families get a little bit confused about like who's providing the services, which is why having like a written policy is going to be really helpful, to kind of help people remember where they are in the process.
Right.
But yeah, it varies, and it also really depends on like the student's needs. I work primarily with students with developmental disabilities, but you could have students with, mental health conditions that maybe need an extra couple of years to just kind of, develop some of those skills they're going to need to go to college or to go to work or whatever. It just kind of depends. There's students with medical needs, so it's very, very variable.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that we do contract with services. For example, last year we had a student at Big E's up there, and she wanted to work in the bakery, so we contracted for a coach. And then they worked with her, and she's still working there.
That's
and
super
she no
cool.
longer has the coach, and she graduated. So
That's wonderful. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like, it's not supposed to feel like they're in high school for 4 more years. It's supposed to feel like something
transition.
Transition to adulthood.
Yes.
Yep. And ideally, if the student, if all of our students, when they graduate, when they obtain their diplomas, we assume that they're all going to be able to go to college or go to work or go get extra training and live independently. And so we're just kind of saying that the same is true for our students with disabilities too.
and even for that student, part of the training was the teacher actually walked the student to get there, because it's not a bus to get there, it's how do you walk there. So that's part of transportation training too. Like, how do you figure out where you can walk? How do you navigate?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Get to work on time, deal with disagreements with your coworkers or your boss. Or
Have your uniform on.
Yep.
There's a whole list of trainings that have to happen.
And Big E's has historically been a really good partner.
I was going to say, she's lucky to have an excellent boss.
Yep.
Who's a really great community partner.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you for that
Shout out to my
example.
super.
That example made my
It's cool.
my night a little bit. So.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a neat thing. It's a, you know, one of the cool things that we do. So wanted to get it in writing.
Any other questions or discussions? Okay, so we are going to take a vote. All those in favor of approving the first reading for a brand new policy for transition services for students with disabilities ages 18 to 22, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So we will hear a second reading of this policy at the next meeting, and if it again passes the vote, then it would be adopted as an active policy. What sort of explanation do you think we need to do? Because I don't see, all I see in our packets for the school choice are some school choice
Yes.
guidelines and our current policy, so I don't see anything that we could vote on tonight.
The new one should be in there.
It isn't.
It isn't.
Oh, it isn't.
Unless, is that
Change of dates, that was
the
basically-
school choice guidelines? Is that this?
Hold on, let me look on my phone. Because essentially the school choice one was we just moved the dates back.
That's all.
So hold on a second. I thought when this meeting got rescheduled, it threw me off.
Yep, it threw everybody off.
Nobody hit the match.
But if all we're doing is changing a date, then I can make a note on the current slip I have and we can move forward with the first reading for that.
Hold on a second. Let me just make sure I have the right one.
Just have pieces of paper everywhere.
I know, that's what I'm trying to cut down on that with my
I
little
know. The
machine.
electronic
here.
version of this, I have the
Actually,
Killing Trees version.
might have it in here. That would have been on last. Sorry, everybody.
The packet just got transferred, so I don't think looking at the past packet is gonna help.
Let me see that's over here.
Here we go. All right. This is from the, it's taking a second to come up. School choice, this is the new one, right? This was the new one,
Yes.
right? So, okay, so
Jay.
which one are you looking at, Laura?
It says current. Adopted in 23.
No, there's another, is there
And
one?
then I have school choice guidelines.
Uh-huh.
And then I have the school choice application.
You don't have one that
This
says?
is all we have in the packet.
Yeah.
What packet is this then? Hold on. This was from, I don't know when this was, okay.
All I need are whatever revisions you made.
Yeah,
I don't need a hard copy in front of me.
okay.
I just need to know what revisions we are
What's the date?
proposing to replace, so that we can have an appropriate motion,
Yeah. So
and you can read from
Yeah,
the one
okay.
you have for the
Perfect.
first reading. Okay.
Yeah, so that's weird because my packet has current and then the next one is the
Oh, this is,
revised,
I got
but-
it, it's on the, it's connected to the transition one on the,
Yeah,
on the agenda, it's connected to the transition one. If you scroll down from transition,
That says current. Where's
Yeah.
the new one?
it's then the next page.
hold on. Nope, that just says guidelines.
We
And the
can keep
application.
relitigating this, or we can move forward.
No, I'm just
with
confused
whatever
because
the
I have it in
revision
the
is.
packet
it's
that
not
I
there.
have.
Yeah, it's missing that one page.
That's
the
weird.
From
application.
last meeting?
Yeah, the packet from the last meeting.
But you can just read anyway.
Right, I don't need a hard copy.
Okay,
You'll
cool.
need it to
We
read
haven't made
from.
any, the only changes we made was the dates, so.
Okay.
So let's see. We are looking to move the dates back, right? Does that make, yeah. So, I can't look at both of them at the same time, unfortunately. May 1st,
Oh.
April 1st. Huh?
Really? Can you talk to me? What are you want to move the dates back later? That makes it really difficult to compete.
No, the back in the calendar.
Earlier.
Up
Okay.
Earlier, but you know what's weird is that this does look,
So should we table this first reading for the next meeting?
well, I'm just confused as to why you don't have this.
That is not my concern. My concern is that you have the new one to read from.
Yeah.
And that you can state clearly for all of us what the revisions
Yeah,
are
but
to
is
the
it,
dates.
when's our next meeting?
April 8th.
Is that gonna be too late?
What's your proposed new date? Because you need 2 meetings. You have to do
Yeah.
a first and a second reading. So that's April 8th.
We have May.
And then
we have
May 13th.
1st. What does it say? What is the date that you have on that one?
That by May 1st of every school year, the administration will determine the number of spaces in each school
Yeah.
available. That by June 1, if consideration is being given to withdraw from the provisions of the choice law, a public meeting will be held to
Yeah.
review this decision.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I don't have the right. Let's do it in April then.
Okay.
Will it help to look on a computer?
Yes,
Is that-
that's what no, I need my computer.
Okay, so we are going to
Sorry
table
about
the
that.
school choice revised policy for the, can you make a note of that, Priscilla? We're going to table that
Sorry
for the
about that,
April 8th
guys.
meeting. Don't apologize.
Do you want to look and see what's on the other?
Nope,
Yeah,
I want to just move along because we are crunched for time. Okay, so that one we will take up at the next meeting. So the next item on the agenda is we have a finance. No, we're not there yet. We're getting there. The finance subcommittee update, we're going to get to in the second half of this meeting. And the CES update, have you met?
I'm meeting tomorrow.
Okay, great. So we'll have an update on that on April 8th. And lastly is the request from Sam Hunter on February 12th of 2025 for reconsideration of the vote taken on February 11th, 2025 regarding the 1% student population that may participate in the virtual academies in the state.
Yes.
Maureen, do you want to speak to that situation and then we can frame a motion?
So it's called the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Virtual School Enrollment Restriction. And what we had voted on was that we did not want to go above the 1% for students taking the virtual school. However, afterwards, I looked on a chart and I saw that we had 1.24% of the
So we already
students.
exceed
So we
what
exceeded
would
it.
be ideal.
So I didn't think.
And this is something we reset every year?
This is something, yes, that every year we have to do. So that's actually 17 students that we have doing that. And the October 1st count was 1,368.
Okay.
So I just didn't think it was right that we hold it at 1%, and those students that are already involved in it then wouldn't be able to continue.
Yeah.
And if there were new students that wanted to add,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to. So I thought that we should reverse that vote, which automatically goes to 2%. So in the state of Massachusetts, you cannot have more than 2% of your students. So that we would just not have to vote on
Yeah.
this, rescind our vote and go with what the state gives us, which is 2%.
Okay. So what I am looking
Yeah,
for
makes sense to me.
is a motion to rescind the vote on February 11th, 2025 regarding the 1% student population cap to participate in the virtual academies in the state. I'm looking for so moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Sam. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. I heard you right afterwards, Linda. I get you next time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, excellent. Next, okay. Next is a school update with one item for discussion, which is the Federal Department of Education vote on legal matter. Okay, where to begin? So today is Tuesday. It is Tuesday. Yesterday was the culmination of about a week and a half worth of deliberation and work on part of the school committee. That work did take place in phone calls between myself and Sam Hunter and a legal aid group out of Washington, D.C. And then we brought their suggestion to the committee in executive session last week. And so I can backtrack a bit for the public to explain that we were approached by this organization of attorneys that take on primarily civil rights litigation to pursue some legal action in response to the current presidential administration's activities around the Department of Education, including the mass firings of between 50 and 60% of their functional staff, and then what later became an executive order directing the department to be shuttered and have its critical services remanded to other departments that I will anecdotally state we have yet to be given any evidence to demonstrate that those other agencies have either the workforce or the expertise to carry out the duties upon which we rely currently. So we're all referencing the Department of Education at the federal level. I can say that from our perspective, speaking very specifically to the district in Easthampton, we have received this current fiscal year upwards of $800,000 in federal funding. That the majority of that is supportive funding for our students with disabilities under the IDEA funding, which is federal funding. And we also, in recent years, have had enormous support and guidance from the OCR at the Department of Education, which is their Office of Civil Rights. They were an integral partner in the work that was done in this district to address deeply concerning racial disparities in treatment of students at our high school, in concert with district leaders and the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. That resulted in a real transformation of that climate at the high school that we continue to be proud of and extraordinarily protective of to this day. But not only that, it also increased our community partnership with the Easthampton Police Department, and it worked to transform how they view community policing in concert with the school department. We replaced the SRO, the school resource officer. That position was removed from the schools, and instead we have regular events and communications with the police, both in and out of uniform. And the police department has gone on to hire a full-time social worker who not only lends really necessary guidance and support to police officers, but to the community at large and the school department in particular in times of trauma and crisis. So all of that is just specific examples that we can offer off the top of our head of our critical reliance on the Department of Education, and is what motivated us to move forward with a legal action. That complaint was filed on Monday. It is now a matter of public record, and I can make available, it's roughly 60 pages. We can make that available for anybody who is interested and likes to read legal filings. But essentially what the ask is in the complaint is an immediate injunction to stop the firings, and then a reversal, meaning an attempt to rehire and maintain that institutional knowledge at the Department of Education, and furthermore an attempt to try and prevent the dismantling of the department as it stands on two grounds. The first is that it would be a terrible outcome that would result in a lot of harm in public schools and their students, their staff, and their families. And secondly, we agree with the legal theory and argument that if one were to read, let's say, Article 1 of the Constitution, it's laid out pretty clearly the process by which the United States is allowed to both create and dismantle departments. And it turns out that's the job of Congress, y'all, not the executive. So that is what motivated us to take action in this way. We aren't looking to pick fights, and we don't start them, but we do, when called upon to support and defend public education, we will finish that fight. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say on that matter? Because we are going to have a second vote this evening. We have joined that litigation. We are named as a plaintiff. I signed in my authority as chair of the committee a retainer. This, of course, is just a contract retainer in that legal sense. This is a contract between us and the lawyers. I want to reiterate, as we had said in all of our public statements, that this does not cost the district a dime. We are being represented pro bono, as are all of the other plaintiffs. But that retainer is an agreement that states that we are allowed to withdraw at any time. So that allowed us to move forward with signing ahead of this public meeting, but I would like just to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, have another vote in this public facing meeting to demonstrate what I would expect is continued support for that legal action. So would anyone care to make a motion, or does anyone have any questions before we move to that?
I'll just add one other thing that, so I think that was a great overview. No decisions were made lightly. We've spent hours discussing, thinking through all sides of it, and one of the things that kept coming up is a source of particular pride in our district is our We the People team, who are experts on the Constitution.
Article 1 in particular.
And we just, we have a group of students who wins at the state level, and they win at the national level about the Constitution, and how unfortunate it would be that we did not also join, a constitutional right along with them and sort of fight for what we and they know is right. So anyway, I just wanted to, we're inspired by our students.
We want to offer clarity that we disagree with this action on two fronts. We disagree with the decision and we disagree with the process. And that is the heart of the legal filing and the legal complaint. And now we let the courts handle it from here. Yep. So motion to continue with the legal action against the current administration and the Department of Education.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously for the second time. Thank you very much to the committee. And we really appreciate all those who have reached out to share their support and appreciation. Again, as Megan said, these issues are not taken lightly. We take this work incredibly seriously, and we are heartened to see that our values are just so widely shared and appreciated in the community. Yes.
I have figured out the policy thing.
Okay.
Can we go back to that or no? Okay.
We're gonna do that. It's 5:54. We gotta get to the
Sounds
budget
good.
hearing, and I have a whole list, but that's fine. It's fine. That's great. I'm excited for April 8th when we can have that
Okay,
discussion.
cool.
All right, so we're gonna move on to action items.
That's me.
Okay, you got that, or do you wanna take notes?
Yeah, no, fine.
Okay.
Motion to approve the school payroll dated 2/11/2025 in the amount of $73.24.
Second.
Is
Thank
that
you,
not
Sam.
a typo? That's a real, okay.
We're getting a nod. That's real. Okay, Sam, thank you for the second. Do you want me to take notes on the second? Sam, can you just second all of these?
Yeah.
For the ease of Megan's record keeping?
Okay, great.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the school payroll dated 2/20/2025 in the amount of $624,477.96.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated 2/20/2025 in the amount of $288,049.25.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Much better. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. I think that's a better way for me to do it because I think otherwise the queue, it's like, do we go on 3 or do we go
Right.
on, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Next.
Motion to approve the school payroll dated 3/6/2025 in the amount of $630,681.11.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated 3/6/2025 in the amount of $356,841.82.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the 2/5/2025 regular and executive session minutes.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I misread meetings for minutes. I'm sure it doesn't matter, but the minutes from the meetings, not the minutes from the minutes. It was a small typo, or a small misspeak, just for the record.
Excellent.
Motion to approve the minutes of the 2/28/2025 Finance Subcommittee meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the 2/20, what is happening with the dates? Motion to approve the minutes of the 2/25/2025 Finance Subcommittee meeting.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the 2/11/2025 regular and executive session meetings.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
And a motion to approve the 2025-2026 school calendar draft number 3. I'm assuming 2/4 is the date that it was revised.
Yes, we had this back in January, but something, yes, so we now have the revised one for approval. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any questions before we vote?
What changed?
What changed was the day before Christmas, and there was going to have to, the union had requested that the day, I think it's the 23rd, not the
Yeah.
day before Christmas, had requested that the whole day be off, but we can't do that because of the union contract required days, so it's a half day for kids, but a full day for staff.
Okay, I want to highlight for parents, because I'm already getting this question on Facebook. So for the newly about to be approved school calendar for the 25-26 school year, the first date of school for students will be Thursday, August 28th, 2025. Bear in mind, if you're a high school student in grades 10, 11, or 12, you'll have a delayed start that day. Freshmen only start at the regular, so August 28th, everybody. Kindergarten has a slightly later start date. I think that's the 4th.
Yep.
Yes, pre-K and kindergarten students, September 4. All of the students, August 28th. And that'll be on the website imminently. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Excellent. Our next meeting dates are April 8th, May 13th, May 27th, and June 10th. I'm going to stop there because we don't need to go through the whole rest of the year. We are going to adjourn and then reopen this immediately for our public hearing for the proposed budget. Motion to adjourn?
Motion, so moved.
Thank you, Sam. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We are adjourned. And I will now call to order our open public hearing on our FY 2026 proposed budget. We're going to roll call in. Ben?
Ben Hersey here.
Megan?
Megan Harvey here.
Laura Scott present. Sam?
Sam Hunter here.
Linda?
Linda Marquis still here.
Mayor? Here. Excellent. Okay. So, Julie, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you're in here now, so can you give her access?
Yes, I can.
You can't ever miss a meeting and you can't ever leave the committee.
That's fine.
That's
okay,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very reasonable, as long as I can read dates. Okay, you should be fine.
All right. All right, good evening, everyone. First off, I would like to thank a number of people for their work in creating this year's budget proposal. I'd like to thank the district leadership team for their time and effort and all of their hard work in thinking long and hard about the budget and the activities going on in their schools. I'd like to thank the finance subcommittee for their time and their input and their discussion and their feedback as we honed in on the budget proposal. And also I'd like to thank anybody who answered my questions as I stepped in the middle of this process to step into this role. And I'd also like to thank Nick Bernier, right, for leaving me incredibly detailed information and notes and a process and a timeline to follow, and being willing to answer phone calls, emails, and texts about questions as things came up to try to make the process as smooth as possible. Detailed information about the FY26 budget proposal is available on the district website. I'd also like to thank Michael O'Connor at the high school and the art students in his program for designing the cover of this year's budget proposal, which is here on your screen. So this presentation will be available up on the district's website tomorrow, as well as a link to the full budget proposal for anybody that would like to read all 100 pages of it. As we start, I would just like to highlight some things about the current conditions in Easthampton Public Schools. For FY25, our official enrollment as of October 1st was 1,393 students. That is what is used in all the calculations at the state level for determining funding formulas. So obviously our enrollment fluctuates on potentially a day-to-day basis, but that is the number that all of the calculations are based on. Currently, our average class size is 17 students. Our most recent calculated graduation rate is 91.8%. And our We the People team that has been mentioned already is now 9-time state champions. So the district and the committee and the staff are very proud of the accomplishments of our staff and our students. And we believe that this budget proposal supports and continues to support all of the efforts going on in the district. So the development of the budget for FY26 is what we call a needs-based budget. What that means is that the budget focuses on the needs of students and aligns those needs to district goals that are articulated in documents such as our values, our mission and vision, and our strategy for growth. This budget aligns priorities and personnel and services that directly impact students. Our goal with the budget is to utilize all of the available sources of funding, including revolving, including grants, including state funding and local funding to support the programs going on in our district. And our goal was to provide level services for FY26. So that means to continue to provide the services that we're currently providing in this fiscal year that we think are meeting the needs of students, and continue to provide those services to our students next year. As you can see in the slide, we have had some changes in enrollment over the past couple of years. Our enrollment spiked, right, prior to COVID. And then after COVID, we see that we have had a decline in enrollment. But along with that, we have had an increase in the percentage of students with needs for additional support. That includes students with disabilities, English learner students, and low-income students. So while we've seen a decrease in the number of students that we are serving, we are seeing an increase in the needed levels of support that we need to provide to the students that we have. So this budget includes the necessary resources to support the needs of our students here currently in the district.
Julie, can we make a brief note for the public? The declining enrollment is not an Easthampton phenomena.
Yep, we are seeing that statewide, pretty much with very few exceptions statewide are we seeing districts with increasing enrollment, and that's just, you know, shifting demographics, shifting populations, right? People have moved on, you know, smaller families, et cetera. So this is a statewide issue that we're seeing with declining enrollment. And declining enrollment is not actually something that is really addressed in the Chapter 70 formula, and we can talk about that when we get to that slide. This next slide, you'll see that our goal for next year is to keep as close as possible of our current class sizes to next year. So the budget proposal maintains current class sizes at approximately the same size that they are currently at the elementary level from this school year to next school year. So there are several factors that are driving budget increases. The first factor is that FY26 will be year 2 of implementing new collective bargaining agreements with approximately $1 million in personnel cost increases. Right? While that is a large number, that number represents a significant investment in our faculty and our staff that we believe will help with retention and recruitment for staff in all of our bargaining units that will allow us to continue providing services to our students. In FY26, 55.3% of teachers will be on the top 3 steps in their lane. What that means that we have a very highly skilled, highly trained staff who have a lot of years of experience and are dedicated to our school district, and we want to keep and retain those teachers. Chapter 70 funding is flat. Next year it's projected to be $8,946,167, which is a whopping increase of $117,375 over this current year.
So it's not even keeping up with inflation.
No, right, and it's because of our declining enrollment and the concept of hold harmless. So all we're getting is that additional funding per pupil, which may fluctuate depending on what happens in coming weeks with the state budget process. The inflation factor in the current state budget is 2.89%. I'm sure all of us are realizing that that is not what we are seeing in terms of actual prices.
Yep.
LPVEC, through tuition, we were estimating a 5% increase. Those rates have not actually been announced by LPVEC yet, but that is a reasonable estimate given what the rate increases have been in recent years. Out of district tuition, the rate set by Operational Services Division is set at 3.67%. Our regular transportation increase per our contract is 3%. Special education transportation increase per our contract is 7%. And we are continuing to see increasing costs in electricity, right? We're hoping as more of some of our solar things come online that we see some more rebates with that, right? But these are all the major drivers that are leading to the cost increase that you will see in our budget proposal. Currently, we believe that we will be able to continue providing universal free breakfast and lunch as our cafeteria revolving account is healthy. And as of right now, we have not heard any legislative changes that will change that for FY26.
Can we just let the public know that is very much in question? We just don't know. And we've contacted department agencies to try to get answers, and those folks have been laid off. So we don't have direct word or assurances about how much longer the free breakfast and lunch will continue.
Yes.
It will continue as long as the funding is there, but we don't have clear information on that.
Right. The state seems committed to that at the moment, as there is a separate line item in the governor's budget appropriating funds specifically for that is outside of the normal funding channels for school meals. So our FY26 proposed budget summary is $22,794,154. The current year city appropriation was $20,675,578.58, which is an increase of $2.1 million, which is 10.25% overall. What that represents is approximately a 5% increase due to our collective bargaining agreements and a 5.25% increase overall for all of the other expenses included in the budget.
Julia, do you touch at any point in this presentation about how we are currently about a $1.1 million deficit for FY25?
I do not.
Okay, so that's another factor is we've been appropriated $20.6 million for FY25. Our projections currently say that that's about 1.1 million shy of what we will need by the close of the fiscal year. So if you factor that in, that percentage increase continues to shrink.
Correct. So yeah, in this slide, you'll see that there is historical budget information, right? We do see that the past couple of years, our budget increase has been higher than it has been historically, but it also represents the new collective bargaining agreements, right? Which were costly, but again, were important investments in our staff here in the district. In terms of increases, so what have we added to the budget? There are 2 positions that are currently in the budget or that are being funded by grants this year in FY25. As a requirement of that grant, we need to move half of the FTE of each of those salaries into our general fund budget. That's that first line item that is $46,000.
That's the Bright Classroom?
Yep. The next addition is a special education teacher at the high school. Earlier in this meeting, we talked about the life skills program. So we have students that are in a life skills program currently receiving services in the middle school, and those students are aging up out of that program and need to be moved to the high school. So in order to continue providing those services, we need to have a teacher to teach that program at the high school. That is approximately $75,000.
And it is a cohort of students. This is a 6, 7, 8 students? 6 students, so yeah.
Yep. Okay. We're anticipating a $135,000 increase in special ed and homeless transportation. Based on our current students and the placements that we anticipate for next year, we're anticipating a $455,000 increase in out-of-district tuition. We're anticipating a $165,000 increase in utilities. In the budget includes a line item of $62,000 to replace some obsolete technology. Right, there's a computer lab at the high school that will no longer be functional because that equipment can no longer be upgraded.
They have old operating systems that
Yes.
can't accept new updates.
Yep, and so without replacing those computers, those classes cannot be offered anymore at the high school. So in order to maintain that service, we need to replace those computers. And that includes the beginning of a refresh cycle for Chromebooks that we had prior to COVID. So over the next several years, we will need to start replacing devices to continue our one-to-one programs. So most of the increase in the budget is personnel, and then there's some supplies and contracted services such as transportation and those things. So those are the line items that make up the 10.25% increase in our budget. In the budget, in terms of overall changes in FTEs for our budget proposal for FY26, it includes 1 additional special education teacher at the high school for the life skills program, to the reallocation of 3 paras from the middle school to move into that new program at the high school, and to move 0.5 FTE of the 2 Bright Grant funded positions into the general fund. So the overall change in FTEs from this year to next year is 2.0. This next slide shows the proposed budget by location and expense type. I would just like to point out one piece of information on this. It looks like there is a huge change in personnel cost at the district level, a decrease of 21%, and large increases at the buildings. That's because when the budget was passed and proposed for FY25, we did not know how the collective bargaining agreements were settled. And so all of that money was set aside in a line item that was assigned at the district level. And so this budget proposal shows those amounts being reallocated to the schools and amongst the staff where those belong in the budget. A little bit of budget history for you. So this next slide sort of breaks down, a lot of people don't understand sort of where all the different funding pieces come from in our school department budget. Some of our budget comes from the city appropriation. Some of our budget comes from state aid in the Chapter 70 funding formula. So as you can see in FY24 from in state aid, we received approximately 8.6 million. In FY25, it was 8.8 million. And in FY26, the current calculation is 8.9 million. Right? The state calculates what they call required minimums, what they believe it costs to educate the students to provide the level of services that the state deems necessary. The rest of that then comes from the city share. So in FY26, the required minimum, right, calculated by the state is $23,886,650. Now, these numbers are subject to change because the state budget is not finalized. So if there is a change in Chapter 70 aid coming to the city, that means that that will decrease the city's share. So we are all going to be watching with bated breath as the state budget sort of moves through its process. So also keep in mind that there are expenses related to the schools that are not included in the appropriation to the school department. Right? We are lucky enough to receive services such as insurance and benefits for our staff and our employees, trash removal, snow plowing, all of those sorts of things that are reflected in other components in the city budget, which is why you see at the bottom, right, city total net education spending, and includes all dollars that are attributable to educating students here in Easthampton. So one thing to point out is that these numbers reflect minimum aid. Right? So currently, I think that minimum aid was set at $70 per student. Last year, it was $60 in the governor's budget, but was changed to $104, right, at the end of their budget process. So we will be keeping an eye on that to see if that minimum aid number changes.
Pause 1 second, Julie. You were at Ways and Means on Monday. Did they say anything about?
It was not especially hopeful.
Great. Okay. We're just gonna let's keep going.
Okay. This slide shows us some district-generated funding sources that are being utilized by the district to support the operating budget. Right, so we have a BRIGHT grant that provides staffing and supplies for a Tier 3 general education transition program. We have the Special Education 262 grant that is targeted to early childhood. Right, provides a stipend for a coordinator and some supplies and materials for early childhood program. The Special Education 240 grant is one of the IDEA grants that we're worried about, since that provides out-of-district tuition, social-emotional consultation, related services, and professional development to our staff. Title I, right, funds 3 reading specialists in our elementary classroom and some supplies. Almost our entire professional development program here in the district is funded by Title IIA. Title 5 or 4 provides us some money for our English learner program, and then we use Circuit Breaker to fund out-of-district tuition and special transportation. And then we have revolving accounts, including school choice, our textbook fund, our food service, our athletics, right, that support other initiatives going on in our district.
I'm gonna pause you for one more second.
Yep.
Can you highlight for us, or I'll pick on Maureen, of these sources?
Yep.
Can you identify which are federal?
Federal. The 262 grant is, the 240 grant, Title I, Title IIA, and Title IV. Right,
So to a total, I think we're somewhere around $860,000 is what we received in federal funding through the Department of Education. Through the Federal Department of Education. Continue, Julia.
888,000.
Great,
actually.
there we go. Thank you for the precision.
So obviously grant amounts for FY26 have not been established yet. Those numbers haven't been released. So we use projections to develop the amounts that we believe will be available for funding in the FY26 budget. Our projections have been cautious, right? Because of changing conditions, and are based on the current information that we have and existing funding formulas. Everything that we've been told is that the funding formulas and the amounts have been set for FY26, that the Department of Education was currently starting the process to calculate FY27 amounts. So again, we haven't heard that there will be any major changes to these programs, right? But it is on our radar to keep it.
We were notified, and it's been publicly reported, that that office that you're talking about that does those calculations typically staffs about 155 people. Today, there are 3 employees in that office.
God.
Continue, Julia.
Yep. So In total, the summary of total costs from all funds that we are projecting for the FY26 budget is shown here, right? The first column shows what we are hoping to use from the general fund budget, which is made up of our local appropriation and Chapter 70 aid from the state, our school choice funds, circuit breaker funds, food service that is essentially self-funded, right, through the National School Lunch Program and reimbursements from both the state and the federal government, our athletic revolving fund that is funded through gate receipts, student participation in athletics, our Chapter 71 revolving fund that is bus passes, and grants and other revolving funds. So the total district budget, including all funding sources, is $26,293,938 for FY26. Are there any questions?
Anyone have questions? Yes, Mayor.
So when you had mentioned the student population of 1398,
Yep.
I just remember some of the calculations of reimbursements we get go, like they're almost like a year behind or something in numbers. So the 1398.
So the October 1 enrollment numbers of this past year, so October 1 in 2024 is what is used to calculate our Chapter 70 funding for FY26.
Okay.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yep. Other reimbursement programs like circuit breaker, McKinney-Vento transportation, those are based on actuals.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to submit actuals when those reports are due.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I point that out, if you were to go to DESE's website and you're looking at like money per student or calculations, the formulas are really hard to find and there's like discrepancies and it's like, why are there two numbers for enrollment? Right, so the 1398, does that include choice in students?
Yes.
And
It should include any student that we are reporting in SIMS. So it should include in-district students and in-district programs, resident students who are in out-of-district programs, school choice in students. It should include all of those.
So when we look at that total number, it includes in choice, kids who in choice or anybody who's in SIMS. And so when you look on DESE's website and it tells, like it gives you a number of all possible students who like are in, I guess, child find or whatnot within Easthampton, that's not the 1398.
No, because that would include school choice out students, that would include homeschool students, that would include students that maybe we know exist but aren't enrolled anywhere. It could include families that have moved out of district, but DESE hasn't received information about where they've enrolled, right? Because DESE doesn't sort of update a student until they have confirmation that students are enrolled elsewhere.
DESE is a state agency,
Yes,
so if somebody moves out of state, DESE has a hard time tracking that, right?
sometimes.
Yeah, right, it's like
Yeah.
15 days, you're not in a particular school, SIMS hasn't changed, you're supposed to report it to like DCF or something like that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's pretty cool, because they actually go to different states and find the kids most of the time. All right, so choice, charter out. So two questions there. The amount of money actually that we get when a kid comes in and then have to pay receipts, right? And does that calculation of what amount of money we get for in and out charter choice, does that change, or is it a consistent formula?
My understanding is that the formula is consistent year to year unless they update and make tweaks or changes to the formula. Keep in mind that it's a flat fee per student in, out.
Yep.
But then if a student receives additional services,
Right.
there's what's called the special education increment formula.
Yep.
So that the more services you are providing, right, you file a claim form and then you get additional funding for that student if they require additional services.
So is it possible that a choice in or choice out student might fall under circuit breaker?
Yes.
Like numbers?
Yep.
And then the choice charter in out, do we, I know DESE does, but Is that number up, down, like over the last couple of years, or?
I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm happy to pull it together and provide it to you.
I was gonna look at the cherry sheet and
What are you asking? Are you asking the amount that we receive for choice or that we have to submit for choice out? Has that number changed?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious what it is now too.
And it's easy to find on,
Yeah.
on the cherry sheet, but
Yep.
I just forgot to pull it and I wanted to get the question on the record.
Yeah.
So when we look at the 55.3% of our educators who are highly qualified, do we have worries about this year, next year, about retirement? I mean, I know we don't know, but like when I saw that number, I was like, yes. And then I was like, oh, a lot of those teachers have taught for a long time. Do we have?
How long does it take to hit the top step?
20 years, I believe, of service in the
Yeah,
district.
that's why.
Wow.
Just that.
So we have 2 retiring this year.
2 retiring this year that we know of.
Yep.
So.
We gotta sit them down and say, not all in the same year, folks. Stagger it.
No comment. Out of district placements, so the tuition increase has been set generally for the per diem price.
Yep.
Do we expect any specific requests by any of the out of district programs that we use that they might say it's extraordinary as far as like they can't get speech and language professionals, so they're going back and they're asking for that line item in their budget, like an increase of X dollars?
I haven't heard of any. So out-of-district programs have to apply for what's called program reconstitution.
That's it, yeah.
Right? If they're substantially changing their program, which then creates substantially different cost structures, and there's a fairly lengthy budget process that they have to present to OSD, and OSD can do mid-year rate changes. It is rare. I think in the 3 years I was filing circuit breaker, I think there were 2 programs in that 3-year time that were approved for a mid-year rate change. So it's not totally unheard of, but not frequent.
The FY25 budget of 1.1 million, that reduces the 10.5, right? Is that?
The deficit, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I understand that. Of the 1.1, 2 questions. 1.1 deficit, could this deficit be reduced when circuit breaker reimbursement
Yes.
comes and any correction?
Totally.
So circuit breaker is based, so you file in June or by the end of June for your costs in the prior year. You get that revenue then in the current year, which then a lot of districts try to sort of bank that money in the current year and use it as an offset the next year because then you know the dollar figure that you're getting. Right. Part of the problem is that last year we applied for extraordinary relief and we essentially were prepaid a portion of this year's reimbursement last year that they used to close out last year's budget. So it doesn't change the total dollar amount that we're getting. So we effectively sort of robbed from Peter to pay Paul and used a portion of those funds last year. And so we're obviously not going to get those funds this year because we already got them. Right. We are going to be in the process of looking at our extraordinary relief claim. The claim is due on Friday. So I'll be working with them to see if you qualify, but it's rare that districts qualify 2 years in a row because your costs have to have increased 25% over the prior year. And so logically, if we qualified last year, right, to have, if our costs went up 25% last year, they would have to go up another 25% this year in order for us to qualify. So, but we'll be looking at those numbers very closely the next couple of days.
And then similar question around transportation.
Yep.
McKinney-Vento, special ed transportation. Is there a chance that we can recoup any of that money that was spent this year, but we wouldn't get until next fiscal year?
So there,
is that included in the 1.1 million deficit?
So special education transportation costs are included in that deficit. You usually file a claim in October for your prior year because it comes from your end of year report. So we won't know until October of next year what that claim is. So potentially.
Okay.
Yep.
So the estimated 886 or 888 in federal funding. That includes the nutrition programs?
No.
No, right, those programs are essentially self-funding, and we've been given every indication that the state intends to fully fund those programs next year, even.
Assuming they don't have to fill some other unforeseen gap. Right.
But again, there is a supplemental appropriation line item in the governor's budget using fair share funding to fund that line item.
That was my next question. So just fair share, can it cover nutrition?
Yes, there already is a line item
And
in
do we
it.
know if the nutrition programming or the nutrition, that line item, does that include free breakfast and like vacation or summer programming?
Summer programming is a separate application process, right, which we'll be looking at. That application will be due in May. The past 2 years, from what I've been able to tell, we've sort of lost money running those programs to provide that service, but we're able to regain that due to the efficiencies that they have in the program when they run it during the school year. So they're able to recoup those.
And it was much better once we relocated the site, but it wasn't getting quite where the program was building, but remember it started over at the park and it was all rainy that summer and buggy.
No, I'll leave, that's not money related. Well, maybe it's money related. So the, just so ridiculous, but like the first year we went back after COVID, like the requirement was you had to eat on site, you had to go to certain sites. This last year, it was like you had to go to a site to pick up. Like, is there any expectation, especially to increase the access to that we can get a waiver for that, given like the bizarre way, like.
You want to take that one, Julia? Because I'll scream about it if you don't want to take it.
So they took away the waiver for grab-and-go meals and off-site distribution. I have not heard that they're intending to change that.
It's USDA, and again, you can't get anybody on the phone. They've all been laid off.
And that said, is there a way through the state that this coming year we could work with somewhere like the Easthampton Community Center or the pickup drop-off drive-through meal sites that already have families and individuals coming to pick up food? If like with the EEC, I know they're jam-packed, but there are days where there's no food pickup. But like ECC is close to a bus stop. People know where it is. There's a whole bunch of different reasons to go there.
Restrictions on the buildings we can use for it, but I don't remember what they were.
They had to be within a mile of a Title I school, I think. Which I think the ECC is outside of that radius.
It is.
And again, there's the prohibition on grab-and-go meals.
Yeah.
So they would have to come to the site and eat the meal there.
leave with it.
Right, and whether or not there's facility there to
Somebody should put
prep the meal
Doge
off
on
the meal.
this.
Yeah, somebody should get Doge on this.
We've talked about this. I completely agree with this and like this line of thinking. Like, how can we be creative if we can't do grab and go?
Right.
Can we do something like you drive to MVS and your food is there, and then you get to eat in your car with your family before you drive off site or something? But like, what kind of? But that's not technically. We're on property then, right?
No.
Nope.
Why?
They won't let us.
I read the regulation. It's absurd. We can talk about it
We'll
another
talk
time,
about
but
it. I would like to see what we can do to.
yes, I agree. While we're burning everything down, let's burn that
Let's
down
keep
too.
burning it.
Yeah.
And loop in the champions program. Sorry.
Right, so I'll be meeting with Ken LePage to look at the requirements and the application before we submit it, and I will look very carefully to see if there are any loopholes that we can take advantage of.
Great. And then the nutrition programs, does that include any of the food support that can go to like preschool or other like private what's, I don't know, I don't have kids, or I did like 30 years ago. Like All About Children, Young World, or even the reading program, or the
summer reading program?
No, it's like a little family group.
Oh, the EFC.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are we able to give them any food through this funding, or do we know?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the summer food sites are open to any school age resident.
Any school age resident, yep.
Any school age resident. right? So even if they live in town and they go to a private or parochial school, if they live in town and they school choice out, if they live in town and they are homeschooled.
I will say, one part of the regulations, they are not asked for address or identification verification at the site, but they cannot remove food from the site. And that's.
Yep. So any school-age child can receive meals at the site.
And they don't feed adults. So like if a mother goes with 3 kids, everyone 18 and under can get a meal, has to be consumed on site, and the mother doesn't get the meal.
I think the parking lot counts.
Who staffs that?
Chartwell's. And it's run through our food service contractor.
Okay, so it's not like a change in,
No.
in vendor?
Nope. And it's covered under our current contract.
Yeah, okay. So the 1.1 million deficit for this fiscal year, is that just a rollover as a deficit? How is that covered? Or addressed for the end of this year?
For the end of this year, well, we've got a couple of options. We can use more of this year's circuit breaker revenue, which means that we have less to roll over next year. We could use more school choice revenue, right, which would mean that we would have less to use as a budget offset in next year's. Right. We can apply for extraordinary relief and hope to get a prepayment of next year's circuit breaker
That
revenue.
doesn't increase the funding, right? That just like.
It just gives it to us now to close out this year's budget as opposed to next year's budget. And then the next layer of option, well, we could do a spending freeze, right? I could lock the budget right now and tell people that they can't spend any more money, and we could use as much of our current funding as we have, right, to pay those. Or we can go to city council and ask for an additional appropriation.
And Julia's presented all those options earlier this year, and then we did, the committee had suggested cobbling together a partial appropriation, not for the 1.1 million, but for a portion of that. But we were cruising directly into budget season, so we decided to take up the appropriation amount request following the approval of the proposed budget.
Gotcha. All right. The two other questions, and I didn't scribble them down. That was one of the questions why, or related to deficit and whatnot, and the choice charter out, like how does that money work? That's one of the reasons why I wanted to figure out, like, has choice charter out, that amount gone down, or number of kids gone down? And if so, would that help address deficit?
I believe there are charts addressing that in the full budget book, but I can definitely pull that together and send you that information.
That was my last question. The budget book.
Yep.
Where will hard copies be?
There is a hard copy in the city clerk's office. There is a hard copy in the mayor's office. There's a hard copy in my office. There is one available for the public here at the school department. There is also one in Superintendent Benenda's office and one in Sue Colby's office, as well as the full budget book is scanned and available as a PDF on the district's website.
Those were all my questions.
Great questions, Mayor.
Good.
Oh, anyone, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say about that, the 1 million deficit, like a lot of it came from unexpected
Yeah.
special ed,
All of it.
out of district
All of it did.
transportation,
All of it.
out of district transportation and,
Well, out of district tuition, out of district transportation costs.
tuition for students.
And McKinney-Vento transportation.
Yeah, and we only had one homeless student, and now we're up to 6. So that was unexpected. It's unexpected, and for the students, that were placed in outside placements, the district just didn't have the programs or could start the programs for them to receive the services they needed. They were so severe. So that's what happens. We wanted to make sure we met the needs of our students, and they were placed out, and the tuition for some of those are large.
Right. And especially for cases where there's DCF involvement, DCF chooses the placement, and we don't have any say in where that student winds up programmatically.
And if the parents live in Easthampton, then we are responsible financially.
We should talk to the mayor about that
programmatically.
pending one too, that the state thinks we should be responsible for, that is not even a resident of the state, but,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam, did you have a question?
I just, first of all, I really appreciate this presentation. And
Yeah.
I read the budget book, and I found it, this is a very complex topic. Every year, I feel like I understand a little piece of it better, which is good. So, I appreciate kind of picking it up as we go along. One of the questions that I'm hearing a lot from the public is, we hear about other school districts who are doing a lot of layoffs right now and not able to pass budgets like ours is, and everybody keeps asking me, like, what is Easthampton doing differently? And I have been sort of saying we've got a really good team working on this, and we've also gotten lucky for the last few years, because I know that we've got like really good folks working in other districts as well. I was wondering what you might, what your thoughts were, just about like why we're able to sort of make it work. now.
And so I'm going to give you an answer that's to the best of my knowledge, having been here on the job approximately 30 days. My sense is that the district heading into the pandemic was doing a good job of sort of on a shoestring budget providing the services that were needed to students. That then during the pandemic and with CVRF, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, used a lot of those funds for one-time purchases, used a lot of those funds for curriculum, for Chromebooks, for supplies, materials, things that weren't personnel
Not
costs.
for salaries.
Right? That any of the personnel costs that were initially used with that funding was moved off of those grants, either starting in FY 22, 23, and then 24. So that this year we did not have any staff that were on those grant funds that this year as of September 30th, those funds had to be fully expended. So we weren't sort of trying to figure out how to support those positions. Like, I think the team here had a really good sustainability plan when they made decisions about what staff to bring in, how to provide services, how to use that money, so that they avoided the fiscal cliff that everybody's been talking about for the past couple of years. And especially since in some districts, they were able to sort of offset that fiscal cliff with changes in SOA that made up for it, but we're not one of those districts. So I think Nick knew that we weren't going to be one of those districts based on our size and our demographics, and so I'm sure cautioned people against using those funds for things.
Certainly did.
Yes, that weren't sustainable. So my answer to that is just sort of long, thoughtful planning, and I'm sure there were discussions said we have all of this money, let's just hire a bunch of people, and people said, but if we do that now, we'll have to lay them off, and then what?
This district knew that, because this district has always been hard scrabble, shoestring, right, Nicole? And Megan has overseen the budget for a number of years.
So I want to add a few things to that, because I think it's important to note how great the city is doing in supporting public education. While it crumbles around us. This city has, and that's because of a lot of different people. It's because of the group that keeps getting elected into these seats, but it's also because we have a city council and a mayor that keep getting elected. And this, when you look at those year after year increases, it's not like we've had a one-time increase of 9%. This has been 4 years of huge support, more so than we see from other cities, which is all about, and that's through election cycles. So this is what the people of Easthampton are voting for. This is what they want. And as their elected officials, this is what we've been fighting for. And we've had inflection points over the past, I can only say 4 years, where we've said, do we ask for what seems like almost an unreasonable increase, or do we increase our class sizes to 24? And we have held firm that we are not going to do that. And every component of the city has stepped up and agreed that that doesn't align with our strategic plan or our vision or our mission and our values. And I think that's a huge piece. And the parents and the EEA and the teachers, and we've had students come to these meetings. This is the smallest crowd I've ever seen at a public hearing for our budget. We have packed this room. And students have come and stepped up at the podium and read scripted, thoughts about what they need and what they are not willing to, let slide off of the budget. So I just wanted to recognize that, it's that long-term planning, but it's also the commitment of this community, including our mayor, including our city council, through election cycles. So it's not just like a one-time thing. This is what the community keeps voting for.
I want to point out too, all this conversation that we're having is relative. this is not a hugely aspirational budget.
For sure not.
This is a level service budget. What we are seeing, what makes us stand out from many of our neighbors who are in a tougher spot is that they are making extreme reductions in force, which to the average person means teachers are losing their jobs, support staff are losing their jobs, positions are being cut. I think Easthampton has always been a working class, gritty at its core community that has been used to stretching every buck. And I think that when the pandemic shut down and they were flush with a one-time influx of cash from the government, they could see that inflation would come. They could see that prices were going to increase, and it was lock it down. It was, and there are parents who are still demanding more from us, and I hear them, and I respect that, and I understand it, that there's more that we want to offer. But right now, we don't want to fire anybody, and we don't want exploding class sizes. So
The long-term cost of that, it's hard to even calculate.
Right.
The build back it will take.
you're just bouncing constantly in that.
I mean, the class sizes, and we touched on them briefly, but when I was going through the budget book, and then I was comparing to other districts, right now, our class sizes are really competitive with other districts. We're really, I was surprised, honestly. I knew that we had small class sizes, but I hadn't realized how that compared to other communities.
And
Purposefully.
And it is worth noting too that those were really in line with our values a decade ago.
Yeah.
Those smaller class sizes are critically important for just keeping the train on the tracks.
Yeah.
At a second grade level, can you imagine 24 very high needs, traumatized second graders trying to learn to read and to write and to do basic math? These they're not a luxury right now in this post-pandemic hellscape. They're a necessity for learning.
Sorry. I was just going to ask about, so I went to the Ways and Means meeting yesterday, which was interesting. There's a lot of discussion around the circuit breaker, special education costs, increase in special education costs. I was just wondering if you have, and I know you've only been here 30 days, if you have heard anything, from your counterparts at other districts or in other parts of the state about any kind of relief, any kind of legislative relief. I did not seem to hear a lot of that at the Ways and Means Committee.
So the ones that they tend to talk about are rural school aid, regional transportation reimbursement, neither of which impact us, and circuit breaker. Because those are three things that the legislature can change the number on without having to have, an amendment, They don't have to change a mechanism, Because the way those three programs are drafted and the way the legislation reads is every year it is subject to appropriation. So every year they appropriate an amount, and if they want to provide more funding, they just appropriate a larger amount. Right. So there's caps on the reimbursement percent. So with circuit breaker, the goal of that program is to reimburse a district up to 75% of the extraordinary cost beyond a threshold. And so the goal is but when they say fully fund it, they mean to fully give you that 75%. There have been years where it's been 72, where it's been 68, where it's been 55 in lean budget years, 2008, 2009.
It's really bigger.
Right. Go ahead. When they added transportation to that, so transportation you can start claiming, I think, starting in 2019 or 2020. The tuition portion of it always gets funded first, and then transportation gets reimbursed. So sometimes they run out of funds, so transportation ggets reimbursed at a lower rate because they're fully funding the tuition portion of it. And that when they added the transportation piece, it says that they have to fully fund all the tuition costs before they can fund a single dollar of the transportation cost, right? So again, if the Ways and Means Committee, if the conference committee, if they add money into those buckets, it just means that they're increasing the likelihood that they will fully fund those programs. And it works the same way for regional schools transportation. The rural school aid is slightly different because it's just a bucket of funds that then gets dispersed based on a formula based on population density. Right. So those are three buckets that they can choose to just throw more money in that bucket without having to pass additional legislation, which is why those are the three that they say, if you want something done right now, these are three mechanisms for doing it. as opposed to, I saw some of the discussions about like, we need to tweak the Chapter 70 formula.
Yeah, that was very much off the table yesterday. They're not interested in tweaking Chapter 70.
Right, because, I mean, it took a committee 10 years to come up with the changes that they just made.
Right.
And the problem is that, right, the tweaks that would help our community are not the same tweaks that would help other communities. So it's I can see where they're coming from, where it's difficult to create a formula that's going to help everybody. I mean, the only way you help everybody is just by like dumping overall more money into the system.
There was more discussion than I expected about hold harmless and the effect that hold harmless has, and that felt more germane to us.
Well, and it's because we're seeing declining enrollment across the state. Exactly. I think now of the 360 odd districts, 251 of them across the state are in hold harmless now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know what hold harmless means in my work.
Yep.
What does it mean in this work?
So it means that you will not get less funding next year than you got this year, right? So
Even if your population
goes down, right? So, and the part of, maybe I shouldn't say this in public, but the part of hold harmless that nobody talks about is if you're a district that's had declining enrollment consistently, right? Your district is technically overfunded.
You never get out of hold harmless.
You never get out of hold harmless.
Never get out of hold harmless.
Right. So you get what you got last year plus that minimum aid per pupil, right? Which is why we get that extra $117,000 because it's the $60 per student.
Right.
So you get what you got last year plus.
It's weird. So they set a cap on the emergency relief for circuit breaker, but not a cap on the hold harmless.
Yeah.
I would never have my client settle hold harmless that did not have an expiry on it. Well, that's just me.
Maybe you should be elected to the legislature.
Thank you. No, thank you. Mayor, did you have another question?
I do. What is the base amount for the circuit breaker, like, formula?
You'd have to ask me that, wouldn't you?
Can you repeat? I didn't hear the question.
The base number for the circuit breaker amount. So it's like whatever percent they give us over a certain number.
It was 54,000 and change the last time I looked at it. It goes up every year based on the inflation number.
That was my next question.
Yep.
Is that set arbitrary, well, not arbitrary, whatever, by the legislature or DESE?
When SOA went into effect, they put in a number with the assumption that you were getting more per student. And so they made the adjustment based on the changes to the Chapter 70 formula. And, you know, it's based on an average of the per pupil expenditure and some factors.
FTEs for the school year, we're up 2.0?
2.0.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there was no loss, net loss?
No.
2.0.
And that's just the life skills program.
Right, it's really going to be an increase of one body because we had two staff that were fully grant funded. That next year is a term of that grant can only be half grant funded. So next year they'll be half in the grant and half in the general fund budget. And then the next year they'll have to be fully in our budget for FY27.
And then, do you have an idea right now with this budget, what percent will be over the required local contribution?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I mean, is it reasonable, and I forget what it was last year, but say 115. Do you think we'll bump up above 115%?
I don't think so. I think it will probably hover about the same.
Okay.
That's there's probably a page about that in the budget book, but I can double check that figure and get back to you.
You can tell who didn't read it. But I do have a very nice copy in my office.
It is lengthy,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of graphs and a lot
There's
of
also
charts.
been a lot going on in your
Yes.
defense.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why there's more than one of us.
Yeah, exactly right.
There you go. There you go. Great to have a school committee who's got my back.
Linda, do you have any questions?
I do have a general comment.
Yeah, yeah.
So around like the budget and why we, aren't in the position of other districts with layoffs and whatnot. I think there are a couple of reasons, and Julie, I don't disagree, or Laura, with any of your comments, but while we are hard scrabbled, I think folks, when you look historically back at our education budget, it had been woefully funded. So to make up, like when we talk about the good budget years, we're just never going to gain back those underfunded years, especially with inflation on top. And one, two, around that, the districts around us took or could take a different approach during past years and provided a lot more services that we hear from parents all the time that they would like to see here. The
foreign language at the middle and elementary school levels, expanded STEM.
And I think that the so it's great this year or last year, and we're these budgets are being presented the way they are, but long term we're at a loss. Julie, you could run the numbers, but to get where we think we should, or to meet even half of the needs, your suggested percent. Not that I'm guaranteeing full funding on this. And I will abstain from this vote, as I always do.
As the mayor always does, everybody.
25% increase isn't going to fill the hole. So that's all. Now I'm done.
Great. No, that's
got it all.
Good conversation. Anyone else? Sam, I can smell it on go. What do you got?
Well, I don't know how I feel about that. I also just want to put a general comment out. I think, there are definitely going to be people watching this, who aren't maybe as well versed in school budgeting as
I would hope not.
Those of us nerds stuck here. I just want to really emphasize too. We're going to be talking a lot in the next couple of years, and we have been talking a lot tonight about special education, and just across the board, the cost of special education has been going up for all districts, especially out of district tuition, and especially transportation. And I just want families to know, it is not your responsibility as the parent of a child with a disability to balance the school's budget. So I just want to make sure that you continue advocating for your kids, making sure that they're getting what they need. They do deserve that free and appropriate public education, just like everybody else does. And so I know it can be kind of alienating to have a kid, especially a kid who has really significant needs. And I just want to put it out there that we want your kid to keep getting what they need, and you're not responsible for that. That's a funding issue, a legislative issue that we're responsible for fixing in some way. But you're responsible for your own kid. So.
And we in this district do not pit our special ed population against our gen ed population. We have a student population, and we will meet all of their needs.
Absolutely.
The only difference is there are laws in place to guarantee needs met for one population and not the other.
Right. Yeah. So we're gonna keep working on it.
Yep. Anyone else have comments or questions?
The only comment that I have is that we've discussed a level services budget, which I think all of us are very proud that we're able to do that, and we're very the community, I think you spoke very clearly to that, Laura and Megan, to the community and what we expect here. I want to make it clear that I think every one of the members of this board really are always looking ways to try to increase those services. We do know we would like to have those programs. We want those. We want to look forward towards that. And we're looking for ways to be able to do that in a fiscally responsible way that we can grow that in this community in a way that it would be sustainable. And that's what we spoke to with the reason that we're in this position. But just because we're saying that we're here now is not because this is where we want the education to stay. We're always looking at ways to improve our arts, our foreign languages, our other areas, and if I've left something out, it's only because I was getting late here and staying through this. But we're looking at ways to be able to provide more for our students and to have, all of us are really committed to that. So I just want to make that note.
And the community supports that. We the People is an example. The American Eels is another. So we are always receptive. They are huge. Yeah. They are the scariest.
They eat bloodworms. I could talk for a really long time about the eels.
We'll talk about the eels next time. Okay. All right. I agree, Linda. Yes, again, it's not an aspirational budget, but it is the product of good work in the current environment, and we still have a long way
We
to
are
go.
aspirational in
Yes.
ourselves.
Preach.
Yes.
I'd rather go down on no other sinking ship, so.
Oh, excellent.
Wow.
Happy FY26, everybody.
Get a beer and talk about the Lusitania. All right.
One more thing. I think, and you brought it up, the costs that don't show up in this budget. One, pension.
Insurance.
Post-employment benefits. So the city has been historically, we hope to continue to be very aggressive on funding OPEB, funding pensions. Pension is 77% funded, and we want to push that forward. I don't know how many school employees there are, but it's 2/3 of the budget. So the percent that you would see in the budget book or overall calculation, in some places doesn't show that whole number. But the other is our health insurance plan is ridiculously good.
Compared to other,
Yeah, and it also went up 18% this year.
Yeah.
And we expect a double-digit increase. So not as a warning or whatnot flag, I just want to make it really clear that there's always comments about the city isn't doing their fair share, blah, blah, blah. And it's hard to get to that behind-the-scenes number. It's not an obvious number. And sometimes we do this year. We don't know that number until this has vote, but we do, and it's health insurance is 18%. We do have a commitment to be very aggressive funding those. The other thing that we have done with the retirement board, they've been great partners, is we have increased our base salary higher and higher, so retirees are able to access more benefit, and it actually helps them, like right now, it'll help the retirees in the next 4 years, just access more of that. So that's another cost that's behind the budget that affects all city employees, so there's a charge back for that. But it is a part of what the city puts towards schools.
Right. And just a comment on that is that every municipality handles that charge back differently, so that when you go to compare your school spending to another school spending, right, it's very apples to oranges in a lot of cases because of that.
And then you factor in regional schools.
I was going to say.
And it just throws the whole.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just want to make a note. We didn't have any members of the public in attendance when we kicked off the budget hearing at 6 o'clock, so I didn't open for public speak. I just want to give an opportunity now because legally I have to. If anyone from the public would like to weigh in now that they've had the opportunity to see the full presentation on the budget. So if anyone in person or at home, I'm not singling you two out, you're okay, you don't have to speak. You can if you want to. Do you have a question or a concern? Okay. We are joined by two gentlemen from the Eagle Scouts with us tonight who are here to earn a merit badge to watch Democracy in Action. How's it going? Did you read that budget book in preparation? No.
Oh, no, you're not ready for the quiz then.
Sorry.
Okay.
I can't say I did.
So with that then, seeing no interest in public speak, I would entertain a motion to approve the proposed budget for FY26.
I would love to make that
go for
motion. So moved.
So moved. Thank you, Megan. Can I get a second?
I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Linda. Superstar. Okay, we're gonna go down the line. Ben?
Ben Hersey, aye.
Megan?
Megan Harvey, aye.
Laura Scott, aye. Sam?
Sam Hunter, aye.
Linda?
Linda Markey, aye.
And Mayor? Abstain. Thank you so much. The proposed budget passes. Thank you so much to Julia Sari-Franks. That was a rock star performance
Yes,
tonight.
thank
We're
you.
just so continually impressed and so appreciative and grateful. Again, 30 days coming in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Excellent work.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that is our last item on the agenda for tonight. Unless anybody wants to start talking about bloodworms, I think I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
That's what the
eels eat. That's what the eels eat.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, hold on. Do I have another?
Go.
As if you're wondering what I'm doing.
So
I'm
close, y'all,
writing
so
the min-
close.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm writing the minutes as we are doing this. And it occurred to me that I did not say that we had our initial ad hoc committee meeting at the playground
yes.
group, which was great. We are meeting again on Monday. We do have an official ad hoc committee. Those minutes are not quite ready to share because the person taking the notes hasn't written them up yet. But we encourage anyone and everyone and kids to come. We have lots of great parents who are working on it. So
Excellent.
that will be in the notes of when meetings are.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sam. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Kidding. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. We will see you on April 8th.
Sam.